All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. We kind of teased at the end of last episode, but we had a fun episode planned for today. We have an awesome interview, and we are super excited to share that with you. But before we get into that interview, as always, we have to thank our wonderful patrons who make this all happen. Mad Cat Peel, Timothy Meadows, Andrew Towsley, All of the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NF 30, Tim Knox, Rian Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Aaron J., Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you so much for helping us out. We really appreciate you. And without your help, we could not be doing what we are doing right now. And what we are doing, you've already seen the title, you already know, but I am being joined by a very special guest who made his way from England, came over to the States, went to Limestone University, was one of the first winning teams at Limestone University after they joined Division II. Went back to England for a while, then decided, hey, I'm going to become a graduate assistant at St. John's, made his way through New York, made his way to El Paso for a while, and then, hey, now he is the not one but two-time Players Shield winner in USL League One, and just recently named, and deservingly so, USL League One champion, Dominic Casciato. Dominic, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Kaylor. How are you?
Great. Has League One champion gotten old yet?
No, we're feeling pretty good about it. So yeah, nice to lift the title on Sunday.
So obviously, last year you guys won the Players Shield, and you did it again this year. Can you explain to people just how hard it is to be the best team through a full 34 matches, not once, but twice back to back?
Yeah, look, I think all teams and all coaches they all work really, really hard, right, at this level. Um, and I think there's a lot of respect for what everybody does. You know, all the other coaches and all the other teams in the league. I think for us to come out on top 2 years in a row is a really big achievement because it means you've been the most consistent, and it's kind of a validation of your work. So yeah, for us, it's a massive achievement, and I'm really proud of all the players and staff that work so hard to get us there.
So we're going to kind of back up and talk because if people did not read the interview that you had with Nicholas Murray, just kind of naming your history through everything, first off, they should. But if they did not and they just want to kind of hear through it, you went to Limestone University, and there's going to be a lot of people who say, where is that? It's in the middle of South Carolina, where arguably the most famous person to come out there is MLB Hall of Famer Gaylord Perry. Um, that is just not many people really know much about Limestone University. Going from England to the middle of kind of nowhere, South Carolina, how did that happen?
Yes, it's a good question. So I was kind of playing semi-professional back in England in what was the National League at the time, or not National League now, it used to be called the Conference, Conference South. I was in. So basically, I was playing there. I was working in the city of London, and I was just kind of fed up and wanted to do a little bit more of my life. And I felt like if I could play in a full-time environment, that it would make me a better player, and I might have a chance to play at a higher level. So initially, I had my sights set on going to New York City. I'd been seen by the coach at Columbia University, Dieter Ficken, and he'd spoken to me about coming over. But then my SAT score was quite a way off of what I needed to get into Columbia. And he said to me, "Look, if you spend a year or 18 months, your score will come up, and you'll probably be good enough to get in." But I didn't want to wait. And in that time, I met an assistant coach at Limestone. His name was Ben Shepherd, and he convinced me to come to Gaffney, South Carolina, which, you know, as a kid from East London, I wasn't quite ready for at the time, but it's probably the best thing I ever did in terms of, you know, seeing a different way of life and slowing me down a little bit, getting me out of an environment I'd been in all my life. And yeah, had an incredible time there and achieved a lot. And I think really laid the foundation for my career now as well. So I'm really grateful and really thankful for my time there at Limestone.
So you mentioned being, from East London and playing in the Conference South. What academy did you end up kind of coming through? And were you one of the guys that kind of bounced around after you were going through the system?
Yeah, I never really stuck anywhere. I spent a little bit of time with Fulham and wasn't really good enough to be like one of the top players in an academy system. Um, and I always felt like, I could be pretty good if I got in a full-time environment. And it wasn't until I, came to America that I was able to do that. And then by then it was probably too late for me to play at the level that I wanted to play at. So yeah, so for me, like I was never a top talent as a kid. I was always a really hard worker, and that kind of got me through a lot of things and allowed me to play at a respectable level, but never get to the level I wanted to.
A few months ago, people who follow the USL show know that we interviewed Hugo Faru, who is at Loudon United. And obviously he's French. He had to learn how to speak English, so it's a bit different. But he said that the first time he kind of came through and had to deal with the heat of being in the South was one thing going from France. And then the other part of it was being a student athlete. Was that something that was very different from you going through probably being a scholar at whatever level you were at, going through an academy, to actually being a proper student athlete, go into all your classes and having to perform?
I think for me, it was probably the easy bit. I was always, quite a dedicated student, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to come to the US because at the time in England, there wasn't many people combining kind of studying and playing at a high level. There were not that many opportunities to do that, so that was part of the reason why I wanted to come to the States in the first place. So, to be honest, like I really enjoyed both sides of it, and scheduling wise, like we had a really organised staff there with Eric Allsop and Ben Shepherd, who I mentioned. And our classes would be in the morning with training in the afternoon, and it made it pretty straightforward for us. But yeah, I loved it. I loved the football side of things, and then academically, feel like I got a lot out of it as well. So I certainly got the most out of the experience.
So, by the way, your success there, from what I can understand, when your school went from NIAI and then went to Division Two in NCAA, and you guys were the first team to win, and that was your freshman year, I believe. You guys won the conference, I believe.
Yeah, it's funny. It makes me feel old now thinking about it 'cause it was back in 2006, I think. Um, but I remember before I, signed up to go to Limestone. I remember looking and being like, wow, like they only won, two games or something the previous year, and I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I got there. But I found, some really good coaches, some good players that were already there. Guys like Thomas Beattie, who was already there the year before me, and he was actually the first All American in Limestone's history. I was the second. And then Stuart Wright, who's actually the athletic trainer now at Louisville City, or head of performance. So Stu, and Tom were both there before I got there, and then in my class there was myself and a couple of other, players that helped transform the program. And yeah, like you said, we won the conference the first year and qualified for the national tournament, which was quite a turnaround.
So, kind of moving on, you said that, you tried to make it work. You tried to play professional after that, but just, couldn't quite find the level that you felt was worth it, right? To just kind of keep that grind through.
Yeah, I think after I left college, I'd been exposed to like a different way of living, right? And some coaches that really cared about me and helped me in my development, and then got into the pro game and had some time with a couple of different clubs in England at the lower level. It was similar level to what I was playing before I'd left. And I felt like I was a lot better, right? But that wasn't being recognised by the level I was getting opportunities at. So I got a little bit frustrated with that, and I think mentally at that stage I was 23 and I was seeing kids coming out of big academies in the Premier League who were 18, 19, 20, and they were kind of jumping ahead of me, right? Because they're coming from a big club. So I was seeing all this, and I was starting to think, all right, like, maybe it's time to hang up the boots. This is not quite working out. I wasn't really playing anywhere. I was always kind of on the outside looking in, if you like. And then I ended up getting injured, and to be honest, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And I feel kind of guilty saying that because a lot of people they get injured and it ruins their career, right? And I think for
Yeah.
me, it started my career in coaching because I don't think I was ever going to be a top player. And then that injury allowed me to kind of close that playing chapter and say, all right, like, you've gone as far as you can with the playing side of things. You're 23 years old. If you start coaching now, you can get a head start on a lot of your peers that are still going to be playing and get, 10 years coaching experience before they start thinking about coaching. And that's what I did.
And, talked about that coaching starts. You go to St. John's where you're a graduate assistant. A lot of people kind of hear that. And if people are used to being around college sports, they've heard of graduate assistants sometimes through their schools. Sometimes they've heard of other people being referred to that as like an assistant coach. What is that like being a graduate assistant for an athletic facility or for an athletic program?
I think it depends on the program, right? I think it depends on the head coach and how he uses his staff and his resources. I think I was really fortunate working with a guy like Dave Mazer, who literally from the first day I got there, as soon as I stepped foot in the office, I'd got off the plane from London, arrived in New York, get in the office, and he puts me to work straight away. And I rolled my sleeves up and got on with it. So I think for me, it was a great experience. I loved being in that environment. I was involved in pretty much everything. I was treated like a regular staff member, helping with recruiting, helping with on-field sessions, with analytics, with the video. So I was just treated like a regular assistant coach, and really appreciated that responsibility, and learned a ton from being in that environment around Coach Mazer and also Jeff Mattel and Ben Malou, who were great coaches in their own right.
Just something, I just want to make sure that I have this right. You mentioned video. I think I read somewhere that you were a video analyst for Michelin.
I was a video scout for them.
Yeah.
So basically, in the end of 2020, I'd been working for the New York Cosmos. I was the assistant coach there, and I was also head of our kind of analysis and recruitment department. And the club went out of business. And at the time, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to pursue coaching kind of as my full time job and my sole focus, or whether I wanted to kind of get into the recruitment side of things. So as I was looking for work, this opportunity to get into Michelin's scouting department remotely popped up. So I applied. I was accepted into the program and spent 2 years working with them, looking at players on a weekly basis, writing reports, speaking to their head of recruitment, Christian. And that was great because Michelin have done some incredible things with recruitment. I think in a lot of ways they're at the cutting edge of recruitment and player identification. So to learn some of their methods and to be integrated into their system was a really great experience, and something I've kept with me to this day. And I use some of the skills I've learned there, and some of the things I've seen here in Omaha as well.
Obviously, I'm not asking you to give away your recruiting secrets and what you look for. That's not what we want to do here. But, a lot of people kind of wonder how the scouting thing happens. Obviously, you see players when they come through League One or even through the championship if you played them in the Open Cup, and that's how you can see some. But there's a lot of different ways to scout players. Some people are looking through stat lines and box scores through Bot Mob, and other people are looking for specific things on like Y Scout. I'm looking for specific analytics. Is there stuff that you are looking for to narrow down your search?
I guess it's a little bit of a cop out, Kaylor, but it's a little bit of all of those things.
Yeah.
So it's players that you've seen, it's players that you've heard about, it's players that pop up when you're looking at stat sheets. It's players that, when you're comparing KPIs for a certain position or profile, that they seem to meet those criteria. So it's a little bit of everything. And I think the three things that we kind of look for are: one, ability. Are they good enough to play for you? Two, availability. Are they available every week? Are they injured every week? Because you could have Messi, right? But if he's injured every week, he's not good to you. And then the third one is attitude. So if the players tick all those boxes, then we're interested in moving things along.
You mentioned injury. Honestly, this year's Union Omaha team, it felt like you guys were mostly healthy this entire year. I mean, there were a couple things here and there popped up, obviously, but especially during the run, it felt like you guys stayed very healthy. Is how much of that is through what you've scouted? And how much of that is like your program, your staff training, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'd have to argue that a little bit, Kaylor, because we had Steven Dos Santos, who I think is the best number
Yeah,
9 in the league. He missed over 50% of the minutes this season through
yeah.
injury. So that one definitely hurt us, but we're able to work around it, obviously. And then Dion Akoff, who's probably the best fullback in the
Mhm.
league, also missed a decent amount of minutes in the running. But no, you're right. Like I think our training regime and how we manage the loading of the players has helped keep most guys healthy. Um, my assistant coach, Ladule Lakolosara, he kind of manages that, and I think deserves a lot of credit for that. So I think it's a combination of also understanding when the players need a rest, right, and knowing that certain guys can respond pretty well to playing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, and other guys would need to skip one of those games, and then just kind of judging it and having honest conversations with the players to see kind of where they're at as well.
So let's kind of move forward before we fully dive into what this season was for Union Omaha. A lot of people, and especially one of the co-hosts of the USL show, Phil Baki, are big like El Paso fans, right? And you were in El Paso for 2, 3 years, and you were under two different managers. You went from Mark Lowry to John Hutchinson, and I'm not asking you to compare the two at all, but going from one coaching head coach to another head coach, how flexible do you have to be?
Yeah, look, I think very flexible because everyone has their own idea, right, about how they want the game to be played. I think I was quite fortunate to go in with Mark, where he'd already had 2 seasons with El Paso. The team had been really successful and had a lot of good, experienced players. And Mark had a really clear idea of how he wanted the team to play and had established that over 2 years. So I was just there to assist and kind of help strengthen that in the way that Mark wanted. With John coming in, obviously he had his own ideas, but I think the playing style, there was a lot of similarities, and that made it easy for me to adjust.
So then you get the main job at El Paso, wow, Union Omaha, right? And what Peter Marlette and what Jay Mims did to build Union Omaha before you got there, you were coming into your not your first head coaching job because you had other, jobs, head coaching positions, but not with the same expectations that Union Omaha fans have. And, well, your tenure started off with, I think it's 12 points in 13 matches. And then you guys turn around, obviously, with the Players' Shield. But how much pressure was there on you going into a very established, very prestigious program in the United States?
Yeah, I think a lot. I think there were people that I trust and I looked to for advice who said to me, "Hey, like, be really careful taking this job. You know, Jay's been super successful. It's going to be tough to follow him." So I think for me, there was certainly a little apprehension. You know, you're going to go and do this, you could fall flat on your face because of the great job that has been done before you. But thankfully, we're able to stick to our guns. The players bought into our ideas, and we're able to have success in year one and back it up again in year two, which hopefully has proven that what we did in year one was not a fluke.
When you did have those 12 points in 13 matches or 13 points in 12 matches, whichever one it was there a real fear of I'm not cut out for this?
Um, I don't think so. I think there was certainly some doubt about like how we were doing it, right, and a lot of question on our processes. I think if you look at that period, there were, I think it was 7 games. We went without a win. We
Yeah.
tied 5 and we lost 2. But in those games, we probably played some of the best football of my tenure here. Like this year included. So, like, I looked at it and I like to see things pretty clearly, and I'm like, well, it looks the way I want it to look. We're just not putting the ball in the back of the net, and we're just giving away goals late in games or making silly mistakes that are costing us points. So we tweaked one or two things tactically. We tweaked one or two things in terms of how we work throughout the week. And we also spoke to the players. I had a really good experience locker room. And we asked them to fill in a survey and say, hey, like, what do you think is working? What's not working? What do we need to change? And resoundingly, during that period, most of the guys said, look, we're on the right track. It's just not going our way right now. So that gave me a lot of confidence. If the players turn around and said, "Hey, Dom, like, you've got no idea what you're doing. We don't think you're cut out for this," then certainly there would have been a lot of fear that crept in, and I would have questioned myself. But because they said that, it gave me confidence that we were on the right track. I remember after it was actually, I think it was Knoxville. We were 1-0 up, cruising, and we give away a penalty in the last minute, and it's 1-1, and then it's like, wow, like we just can't get a break. So we spoke as a group after that as well, and a lot of the players stood up and said, look, it's just we haven't been good enough. We've got to step up. We know how to win at this level. We just haven't been doing it. And I think part of that is also a new coach coming in, right? Like there's always going to
Yeah.
be a time where you've got to bed in your ideas, and the players have to understand those ideas. And then once they've got understanding, it's then about executing it and giving it context in the game in a competitive environment. So I think once we got over that, and once the group all kind of pulled together, there was no stopping us, and the results obviously showed that.
You talk about having experienced locker room, someone who's been there from the very beginning. And if we are talking pound for pound in the division in the USL, I don't know if there's many players you can put above Rashid Nuhu. Just in the league across any of the levels, Rashid Nuhu is one of the best in the USL in general. Having someone who is just that good between the sticks and has been there for the entire ride of Union Omaha, is there a lot that you can rely on and a lot of safety you can have in him for to be a leader?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think you're spot on there, Kaylor. I think one, he's a tremendous goalkeeper. Two, he's a tremendous person, someone you can trust. And three, I think he's a tremendous leader that leads by example. Right, you can always rely on Shido to come up with a big save or to help us through difficult moments in games, and that's part of the reason why I made him the captain this year. I think everybody respects him, everybody looks up to him, and he's a great example of somebody that leads by example, doesn't lead by screaming and shouting and being the loudest guy in the room. But when he speaks, everybody listens, and he's been a great asset to me in my time here, and a real legend at the club.
Someone else who has meant a lot to this club, and especially you could tell during the playoff run, was Misha Jerome, right? Everything that went on with him and all of it, you could tell how much it meant to the players. You could tell how much he meant to the fans. And, every single time that you guys scored in the final, it was, kissing the armband, kissing the tifo that was put out there. How much did that bring you guys together as a group?
Yeah, I think it brought us together a lot. It's funny because, well, it's not funny, but Misha was a huge part of bringing the group together. He would often host barbecues at his house. His wife, Sandra, is a great personality, would always be having the guys over and encouraging the guys. I used to joke with her that she was almost like my assistant coach. So to see somebody that you love and you care about being in a really tough situation and really struggling, I think gave the group a little extra motivation. And the first game after it happened against Richmond, which was on a Sunday, the incident happened on a Thursday night before that. I think there was a lot of emotion there, and it was tough for all of us to get through that game. But then after that, I think we kind of came to terms with what had happened to Misha. We understood the seriousness of it, and we used that as a motivating tool to galvanise the group and move forwards together and try and win it for him.
Kind of last question about Mishak just before we kind of move on. I think I saw that Gary Green said that the number 2 is going to be retired, that no one's going to wear it after Jerome. And it's not even just like this is the number 45 or the number 60, whatever. The number 2 it's important. Like that's a huge deal. And that kind of just shows how important he was and is to that locker room. Just kind of, I know you said he hosted the barbecues and all that kind of stuff, but was there a part whenever he just wasn't on, just wasn't on the field that you were just like the team was hurting a little bit more from that?
Look, I think we're still hurting. It's going to be a long road to recovery for Mish, and we're getting over there to see him in the hospital in Lincoln as much as we can. He's made good, steady progress, so yeah, that's really pleasing. But he's got a long road to go, and he needs all of our love and all of our prayers and all of our support to get through it. As does his wife Sandra and his cousin Wadner. So yeah, look, it's a tough situation, and we've got a wonderful group of guys in the locker room who are doing their bit to support him the best they can. alongside myself and the staff.
What do you do as a coach during any kind of hard situation like that that's not football, right? There's some coaches that are just like, this is like I'm hands off. There's other coaches that are actively involved. What is your role in all this?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I want to talk too much about
Sure.
kind of my role in it. I've been at the hospital a lot to support
Yeah.
Mishak, and it was great for me to see the progress he's made from the first day in the hospital when I saw him to now. And I'm going to take one of the players over there to see him this afternoon when we get done with this call, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, look, my role is and has been first and foremost to take care of Mishak the best I can to help
Yeah.
him and his family with whatever they need, because I ask these guys to give everything for me, right? So if they do that, and Mishak is probably the epitome of that, when they need me, I need to be there for them. And I like to think I've done that for Mishak, and will continue to do that for Mishak. And then I think the other part of my job is also to make sure the players are informed and know what's going on, as much as it can be expected, right? We also need to respect Mishak's privacy and all that comes with that. But then our players who weren't able to get in and see him until this week, I think it's important they know kind of where he's at, and that he's improving, and those sort of things. So that's kind of been my role, has been getting over to the hospital as much as I can, while also keeping our group informed of the progress he's making, and how he's doing.
Well, let's talk about the usually the main part of your job, which is being the coach, right? And you during this is a question from John Morrissey at USL Tactics, and he kind of asked, "Is there a bit? How much did you change your tactical approaches, especially during the playoff run, is there because there's some coaches like you look at Ben Pierman's where sometimes their tactic is a bit chameleon of we'll just do what you're bad at, or is there a little bit of what hey we are who we are, we do what we do, it's never failed us, let's just keep going? Do you change things at all, or is it stay the course, we're winning?
No, we do change. We do change. Look, we have our identity, and within our identity, there's kind of six pillars. Those things don't change. They'll never change. I don't think they'll evolve, and they'll get better and hopefully clearer. But I don't think they'll ever change, because as a coach, I think all you can really control is the way you try and have your team play the game. So I don't think those things will change. I think what changes for us is the areas of focus within those six pillars, right? So we may notice a team is particularly weak in a certain area that matches up with, one of our principles, or piece of our identity. So we do adjust for the opposition. I think it's a little bit naive if you don't, and if you don't, you have to be really, really good. But we always adjust a little bit. We always make sure we know how they score goals and how they concede goals, and we look to exploit how they concede goals and the chances they give away, and we look to take away what they're strong at. And I think that's your job as a coach, right? To make sure your team is prepared for a specific opponent, and you're able to execute a game plan while also playing the football that you like to play, and not changing completely from week to week.
Would it be me overstepping to ask what those six pillars are?
We have three in possession and we have three out of possession. Um,
Okay.
I won't share too much on here because I don't know who's
Sure.
going to be watching, but perhaps offline I'll share it with you, Kaylor.
Yeah. So within how you change things, obviously can't go too far, but there is a difference between playing a Greenville who had the Golden Boot winner and Liam McKinnon, and then playing against Spokane, who made it to the final off the back of being extremely defensively stout, right? Is there a like we are going to send more players forward against Spokane because we have to break down their defense, or is it like, hey, we're going to drop a few people back or have someone be a little bit more reserved and going forward because we need to be able to stop McKinnon or any of those balls that could go through from the wide areas? Is that kind of how it works?
Look, yeah, I think you take into account, right, McKinnon and what he can do, and we know he likes to cut inside from the left wing, get onto his right foot. We know he's got pace. He's going to look to run behind as well. So in our week, like when we're preparing, we'll plan on that, right? Like we'll plan on when we don't have the ball, this is how we're going to press. And then when they get a little bit higher up the pitch, these are things that we've got to look out for because this is where their goals come from. Looking at Spokane, I think it's similar. They have a player who's really, really important for their attack in Luis Hill, who we know really, really well. Obviously, he spent 2 years in Omaha and is a great player. So for us, it's similar, right? Going into each game, it's like, okay, who are their key players? What are the patterns they like to use to try and get their key players in possession? And if we can stop that from happening, then I think we've got a great chance to be successful. So that's kind of our approach in every game when we look at it from a defensive standpoint.
So, kind of last little thing before we let you go, and I really appreciate your time. You guys were absolutely fantastic. Co-host Ryan Allen has run the numbers as he always does, and he says that this Union Omaha team, according to his ELO ratings, is the best League One team to ever exist, like ever. However, the people have voted, the writers and whatnot have voted that only one of your players was good enough for all league, and that was obviously Pedro de la Bella, who was unreal. Is there a bit of, hey, now, like, we won the whole thing, we were Players Shield, there's more than just one of us that are really good? Or is it just like, man, we are just that good of a team that we don't need to have this entire team to be best 11s?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably a motivating factor for a lot of the guys because I think more of our guys should have been recognised. I think we had, some great individual efforts put forth over the course of the season, and you don't win the league, right, without having some of the best players in the league. So to only have one guy recognised on the all league teams, I think some of the guys took that personally, and I think used it as a motivating factor going into the playoff games. I think from my standpoint, my messaging has always been those individual accolades are only possible if everyone's willing to work and sacrifice for the team. Pedro's a great example of that, but we've got plenty of other players that do that as well. So it's great to hear that the numbers say we're the best League One team that's ever been. That was certainly something we set out to achieve going into the season. And yeah, we would have liked more of our guys to be recognised, certainly. I think that would have been a validation of the quality of players that we have. But we can't control those things. All we can control is our response to it. And I think the response we saw in the final was outstanding and a pretty dominant win.
Mentioning individual awards, you obviously got Coach of the Year. So where does that go? Does that go on the fireplace mantle? Does that just stay in your office? Like, where does that award go?
Yeah, I have a mantelpiece here at home, so they'll go next to the one we got from last year. Yeah, next to our medals.
Good for what a flex that is. Just put it next to the medals. Cool.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound big time. I'm sorry, that's not me.
Hey, you know what? You are more than allowed to do it if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to, I mean, real G's move in silence like lasagna. That whole thing.
I've never heard that before, but okay.
Yeah, sure. Dominic, thank you so much for hopping on, man. It was great time to talk with you. Before you go, is there any last things you would like to say to Union Omaha fans as they continue to celebrate? And I think Gary Green is still buying free drinks at the bar.
No, I just want to say thank you for all the support. It means the world to us. I appreciate all the efforts to support the team and to support Mishak and his family through this really difficult time. And yeah, thank you to UK for having me on the show.
Thank you, Dominique. And thank you all to the people who listened and who watched along. Appreciate you so much. And for the first and final time today, here is Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.